He sent us August 9th. So she passed away the Tuesday before. No, she was in a hospital Tuesday before that, passed on Saturday, completely unexpected. So this was from the 9th, and he said he'd probably miss the next 2 weeks.
That's too bad. How old was she?
He doesn't say, but he says his dad is really in shock. They're married for 59 years and have been together for 65. I think they were well into their 80s. But
Wow.
That's terrible.
yeah.
But it's good. It's beautiful that they were married for such a long time. But then to lose your probably soulmate by then, it's
Yeah.
Oh, it's a struggle, Denise. It's a struggle.
Well, it's right at noon, and I'm sorry I didn't come on to socialize. I was actually on a call with a colleague talking about pay, so that's probably the most important thing I could talk about today. But we'll go ahead and start the meeting out. And there's our bell. Good. And with that, we can open up with the four-way test. So if you want to unmute, you can follow along, or you can click here, or whenever I click, you can know what to say next. But of the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth?
Truth.
Is it fair to all
Concerned?
Will it
Will
build
Goodwill and better
friendships?
friendships?
Will it be
beneficial
to all concerned?
Concerned.
All right, got that recorded, so it's in the books. Visitors and guests, I don't see anybody today. I do have to tell you, we had a last-minute cancellation, and I think Denise, your spidey senses must have been raising the hair on your neck. So the guest that we had today is a friend of mine who is an archaeologist in Alaska. She works for University of Alaska Fairbanks, and she does digs on these 20,000-year-old digs that are, finding and basically rewriting history as we know it for the populations of Native Americans in general, and specifically Native Alaskans on a daily basis. They're rewriting history, but she's not going to be able to make it today. She got told yesterday in a meeting in the afternoon, Alaska time, that she had to leave Fairbanks and go to a site. So she's actually leaving right now, going to a dig site. So she couldn't make it for the call. So apologies there. We have an exceptional fill-in though. So that's going to be great. And we're going to surprise you with that in a minute.
I do hope we get to see her at a later stage though, because it sounds like a very fascinating story.
Yeah.
I do too. No, I do too. She's
off to Alaska next week.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, going for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Well, let's call that an announcement, Roy. Where are you heading?
Go into Fairbanks and then join a ship, spend 2 days around the Fairbanks area, Denali Park and places like that. And then to Anchorage and sail up to Vancouver.
Oh, wow. Nice.
You sail down.
Yeah.
It could take a while if you go that way.
You're gonna love it. I think it's beautiful. I'm not sure I'd want to live there, but it's a fabulous place to visit. It's a lot of fun.
It sounds like it. I think it will be.
It will be.
Yeah. Bit pricey to live there, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Are there any other announcements, any of the big announcements that we might have missed? We have a district conference coming up in October. We can put that in the
I have
I need to add
newsletter.
that to the newsletter. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of that.
I have one too. I'm sorry.
Yep, please.
I have one too. The Rotary, the RLI is, and Julia and I are going to be discussion leaders. So you might want to put that on your calendar. It's the 12th of November down in Boca at the Volin Center. I think it's the Volin Senior Center. I'm like, what are we doing? Pre-visiting or something? Like when they take the World War II veterans over to Arlington Cemetery, it's like, that's like, oh, okay, just having a pre-visit. But yeah, they're it's there. So if you have not gone to RLI, I would like to strongly urge you to do that. It's a wonderful way to learn about Rotary, and you'll get I've already made my reservation. You'll get a chance to see Julia and a chance to see me in person. So, I mean, what could be better than that?
Very interested. Very
I'll try to
interesting. Thank you
remember
for
to
sharing.
put that. I'll put that in the newsletter. I just made a note for it.
It's
so,
November 12th at the some center in Boca. It's on DACDB, and you can register on DACDB.
Okay. And the conference, I'm sure, is also on that. So I need to.
Oh yeah, the whole Magilla.
We're kind of
Alright.
sparsely populated today. There's only 8 of us.
I know. I sent
you know-
Kathleen a message because I know she's not teaching.
No, she is. Kathleen is teaching in the Pacific, on the Pacific coast today. So
Oh.
she's 9 to 12 West Coast time. So she's starting right now.
Oh.
She sent me an email about it this week and next week. I know George Becker is at the VA hospital, and he said he tried to log in last week, but he couldn't. So he'll try again, but he probably can't. Not sure where Alana is. Ailish is here. Roger's not here. I don't know. I guess the most fun ones are here. Dave Andrews, where's he?
Oh.
Fix him. Maybe he's trying to find a shirt to put on.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think he ever bothers.
And Kraz.
Yeah. Where's
Yeah,
Kraz?
he usually lets me know when he can't get on.
I took a group of 8 to see Kraz Saturday night. It was a lot of fun.
You took a group to what?
I took a group of 8 to see Kraz.
Oh, to see
perform.
Kraz. Okay. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
fun, isn't it? We did it a
Full
while
house.
back. It was when you were in the hospital though, Mike.
Yeah, but I had a full house the other night.
Well, let's transition as we're doing that. Those sounds like good announcements. Let's do our Sergeant at Arms. Denise, would you be mind if I fill in for you since you're going to be our speaker?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. All right. So I'll start off. Let me share. This is from Roger Pelser. I'm going to go ahead and open this up and I'm going to put it on the screen here. I know it's kind of small, but on Saturday, this is from Roger. This is his happy buck. When we attended the Cardinals farm team game with the grandkids and their parents, a high pop fly ball that none of us were paying attention to landed in the row in front of us and bounced through the unoccupied seats, landing softly at my feet. And he says he picked it up and gave it to his grandson. So that's a happy buck, an IOU from Roger for his happy
Nice.
buck. And I'll open it up to the group here. Any other happy bucks? Happy bucks. Go ahead, Denise.
Yep. I took a Tai Chi lesson last Saturday and it
Oh.
was a lot of fun. It was actually with my neighbor. She invited me and it's just a small group, I think of 5 women, all 50 plus, but I was the younger one there. And it was really fun. I mean, it was sort of more of an expert class, so they went pretty fast, but I have a background in dancing, so I think I picked it up pretty quickly, and yeah, it was really nice. So I'm hoping to join them more often on Saturday morning.
Very cool. Very
Do you
cool.
know what style it was?
I have no idea, but it looked a bit like what you showed us the last time. So we started with like an opening of all the 5 elements and everything, and I don't know, give thank you or something to them, and then we did several styles with like a ball, and then you had to fight or defend and turn around, and they said it was like quick Beijing style. I have no idea if that's something you recognize, but I hope so.
There's lots of different styles, but yeah, there's a 24 move Beijing style, I believe. But
I think that was it. They said there were like 24 different moves or something. So
good to hear
Very
that.
cool. Very cool. Ailish, I see your hand up there.
Yes, you all look very well, all 9 of you, and it's good to see you all here. I just have a happy dollar from Mike that he's looking so well and obviously well in his way to a complete recovery, and that's really good. Good to see you,
Thank
Mike.
you. Thank you.
Definitely a good happy buck there. I will have another happy buck as I transition to sad bucks, because I am happy that I'm closing on a new home tomorrow, but I'm sad because I just wrote a check for $120,000 yesterday. So sad about that.
But you should be happy that you had the $120,000 to write the
Yeah,
check with.
that's what I was about to
There
say.
you go.
yeah.
There you go. Any other sad bucks? How about some sad
You
bucks?
got any left over? I'll be happy to take it off your hands.
Denise, you have a sad buck as well?
Yeah, my sad buck is sort of financially related as well. Everything is getting way more expensive here in the Netherlands, and I find out I don't really have anything left at the end of the month to spend, and with that, I unfortunately cannot come and visit the US in March for the pets. So I have to find a way to do the pets here in the Netherlands. So I send out an email to Rotary Netherlands because as it turned out, the pets for the president-elect this year has already passed. It was last March. So I have to see if I can join the next one in March. So that's what I wrote them and asked if that was possible. So, but yeah, I'm sad about that. I simply do not have any funds to visit the States at the moment.
Any other sad bucks?
Yes, I think that's really sad because I was looking forward to seeing Denise again.
Yeah, no,
I was
me too.
really looking forward to seeing you again. But I have no doubt see you in the very near future when we can all kind of get ourselves more better situated with all sorts of things.
Definitely.
Good.
Well, why don't we round it off with anniversaries? Anybody have any anniversaries you want to share? Or birthdays?
Oh, Mike and Joan had one last week, right?
Last week.
Yeah.
Old news.
I know, but still, it's something to celebrate.
Oh, you want more money from me?
Oh, yes, definitely, always. If I don't have it,
Okay.
somebody else needs to spend it.
All right. Well, with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing here and introduce our esteemed guest of the day. As I mentioned to you, we had a last minute cancellation, but thankfully, we have a wonderful presentation by our very own Denise planned. So Denise, with that, I will turn the microphone over to you and say thank you so much for your time.
Okay. So am I able to share my screen? Not yet.
Oh, here, let me click the button and go.
Okay, let's see, because last time this didn't work, so hopefully it'll go better today. Let me see. So please help me out if you cannot see what I'm doing. Okay.
We can.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see.
Yep.
Do you see full screen now?
We do. Click on
And
in
do you see me?
Orlando today.
Do you see me clicking on now? This is the
Wiggle
first.
your mouse.
This is my mouse.
It's all in Dutch.
Click on.
So, yeah,
Click on slide 2.
Let's see.
up at the top, it should say,
Yep. And then
and then from
Yeah,
the
start from the
beginning.
beginning.
now it's right at the beginning. It's full screen right in the beginning for me.
But you have to click on the right at the beginning thing so the
No, what
so
the problem
the
is,
slideshow comes up. Because we're not seeing it as a slideshow.
No.
Denise, do
Yep.
you have the slideshow fully in view for you? Not this one that's the editable one, but the one that's the actual slide.
Now it's full view for me.
It's
Okay,
not for us.
so if you do Alt Tab,
Um,
it should pull up different screens for you, and it'll show you all your windows that you have open.
yeah.
So hold
Okay.
the Alt key and hit Tab, and then you
wait
should
a
be able
minute.
to use your arrow key, holding the Alt key down, and move over to that full view screen.
Yeah, there we go. Now you see it?
No, because you didn't set up the screen share to do the whole screen. So stop screen sharing,
okay, stop screen
So-
share.
go back to screen share,
Mm-hmm.
and then click the very first one that comes up, the one on the very left.
That
And
says
that
screen.
shares that's all of your windows that you have open, and you can go between them. So now do Alt Tab and go over to that other one.
Okay, Alt Tab.
There,
Jeez, it's not yet. I don't have it yet.
okay,
There you go.
there you
See
go,
it now?
there you go. Now
Okay.
we've got it. Now we've got the
See
full
me
screen view.
switching
Okay.
it?
Yes, it is switching.
Okay, good. So there we go, finally. Thank you.
Mhm.
So today I'm going to talk to you about prenatal screening via ultrasound. And so basically the aim of the ultrasound and the aim of maternal fetal care is to have an uncomplicated birth of a healthy baby to a healthy mother at term. So I am specialized in ultrasound, of course, so that's what I'm going to talk about. And there are several ultrasounds in the pregnancy for fetal screening, and in some cases also maternal screening. And I'm going to talk you through them. So these are different types of medical ultrasounds that we perform. And this is specifically for the Netherlands. So I'm not completely sure if it's the same in the United States or in other countries, but at least for the Netherlands it is. So first you have a vitality ultrasound, which is usually performed between 6 and 9 weeks. We specifically start at 6 weeks because that's when the fetal heartbeat starts. So we could perform an earlier ultrasound, for example, at 4 or 5 weeks, but at 4 weeks, I simply will not be able to see a pregnancy in a uterus because it is still too tiny. And if you look at 5 or 5.5 weeks, I might be able to see a pregnancy and I might be able to see a fetus, but there will be no heartbeat yet. So we can do an ultrasound, but I can basically not tell you if a baby is alive yet. So that's why we choose to do a vitality ultrasound from 6 weeks onwards. So we know that we should have a heartbeat visible. It is usually a transvaginal ultrasound, and we have them in 2 different options. We'll get back to that later as well. This is a medical form. The medical one we usually do, you get a referral from that from your midwife. And you usually do it to, if you had, for example, several miscarriages in the past, or you had some other problems with getting pregnant, and then your midwife will give you a referral for it. If not, you can always choose to have a vitality ultrasound. You just have to pay for it yourselves. And where I work, it's approximately $40, and we'll have a look at that, you know, just for fun, so to say. Then you have your term ultrasound, which is, I'll get into it more later on, but which is basically to check what expected due date it's going to be. We have the first trimester screening, which is a new ultrasound. We started doing this one last September for the first time. So it's a very early screening ultrasound in which we check for major abnormalities, which would be visible at a very early stage. We have our second trimester ultrasound, which is the 20-week scan. I do think you have that one in the States as well. It's where we check, well, the baby again, but more thoroughly. You have growth ultrasounds, which can be done between 24 and 36 weeks. Usually you have them at, if you have to have growth ultrasounds, you usually have them at 28, 32 and 36, so 3 times in your pregnancy, but you know, you can just add them or deduct them, whatever you like, or whatever your midwife recommends you to do. You have a placental position ultrasound. That one is not something that all women get. It's usually one that you will get if from your second trimester screening, it appears that the placenta is not in a correct position yet. So what we will do then is we will give you a referral for the placental position, which we do between 31 and 32 weeks to check if the placenta has moved up to a high enough position to give you a safe birth later on in the pregnancy. You have position ultrasounds at 36 weeks, basically just to check the position of the head, if it's a cephalic position or a bridge position. That's mostly all you can see at that stage. And you have a certinity ultrasound, which is done after your due date. To check if there is plenty of amniotic fluid left. It is not an ultrasound where you can measure the growth in any way because the baby is way too big by then and you simply cannot see or recognize most of it anymore. Then we have some fun ultrasounds. Like I said, we have the vitality at own request. You have a gender reveal ultrasounds, which we do from 15 weeks upwards. There are some clinics that offer them from 13 weeks upwards, which I would not recommend personally because the gender has not actually formed by then. The gender is formed from 14.5 upwards. Before that, the baby just has a genital part sticking out. And that genital part, there are some theories that you can, you can use on it. If it's more flat, it should be a girl. If it's more upwards, it should be a boy. I have seen way too many mistakes made with that theory. So I usually recommend people to do it from 15 weeks upwards. By then you will actually have labia or a penis sticking out. So yeah, that's why. We do 2D fun ultrasounds, and we have 3D and 4D fun ultrasounds, which are very nice to do. We'll get some pictures later on. So this is, these are a couple of pictures from the Vitality ultrasound. So what you basically do is check if the baby is in the uterus and if the baby has a heartbeat. So that's why we want to do it from 6 weeks upwards. We of course also check for twins, triplets, or perhaps more. I've never seen more, by the way, but it's a possibility. We check the uterine shape and ovaries. You don't really have to do that, but I prefer to do it. I'm also trained gynecology. I can't say that word, but you probably know what I mean. And I'd like to check the ovaries as well, because I find them pretty important. I want to know if there are cysts there or if there are other growths on the ovaries that we should pay attention to. And it's usually a transvaginal ultrasound, because before the 10 weeks, the baby is so small, I simply won't be able to see the baby abdominally, not very well at least. So women are allowed to refuse a transvaginal ultrasound, but the image would just not be as good. And the measurements will not be as reliable in that stage. Then we have our term ultrasound. The term ultrasound gets a bit more, how do you say, has to be more exact. So the baby needs to be in this exact position that you see in the picture. If the baby's not in that position, you have to wait for as long as it takes to let the baby turn. And of course, our appointment usually lasts for 15 minutes. So if it doesn't work out in those 15 minutes, you have to make another appointment and wait for the baby to be in a correct position, because this is the only position that you can actually measure a baby. Most babies up until 12 weeks, they grow the same, regardless of race or ethnicity. I don't know, but you probably again know what I mean. So for example, it doesn't matter where you live, all babies will grow exactly the same. And from 12 weeks onwards, you will see that the genetic markers will start to play a role. So for example, in Asia, babies will be a bit smaller, and in Europe, we usually have pretty big babies. I have no idea what the United States does. I do not have any numbers for those. So it's, but yeah, that's basically what you see. What we do here is we measure the baby from head to bum, and in that way we can give an estimated due date. So that's the date on which you'll be 40 weeks exactly. A baby is welcome to be born between 37 weeks and 42 weeks. So about 2% of babies get born at the exact due date, but it's still something that as a guideline, we need it. If you have any questions, by the way, please just pipe up and ask your questions in the meantime. There we go. Then we have our first trimester screening, and this, like I said, is a relatively new one. Before this, we only had our second trimester screening, and when they first introduced the first trimester screening, we were a bit skeptical because we weren't really sure what the aim was going to be and if we were able to see as much as they wanted us to see. We had some extensive training to perform these ultrasounds, and actually right now we are pretty happy with what we're doing. It means that we were actually able to find a lot of major structural abnormalities in a very early stage, so way before the 20-week ultrasound, and we were able to tell these people that there is potentially something very wrong with their babies, so they were able to take precautions or prepare or just to think about what they wanted to do with the future. With a 13-week ultrasound, like I said, you're looking for major abnormalities. So usually if you find something at this ultrasound, it's bad news. We're looking at a lot of things. For example, do you see my arrow? Okay. So
yes, we see your arrow.
Perfect. So what you see here is the nasal bone. That is one of the markers that we find very important that we're looking for. If that nasal bone is absent, it is usually or it could be a sign for Down syndrome. So that is what we're looking for. And we are looking at the nuchal fold, what you see right here. The nuchal fold is a layer of fluid in the neck area of the baby, which is only visible during this first trimester screening. And if it is enlarged, you have a higher risk of a baby with a defect. And those could be structural defects or chromosomal defects. So it's very important that we get to see those. The middle one here shows a normal head in which you can see two brain halves, which we call the butterfly structure, and it has a midline crossing through it. That's very important too. In the right picture here, you see that that butterfly structure and the midline are completely absent. So this means that this is an abnormal brain formation, and this baby will not be viable once it's born. So this is one of the defects that we are able to find at a 13-week scan. On the left side here, you also see a baby which has multiple defects. We cannot exactly say which defects there are, but what you can see is that there is a lot of fluid build up around the baby, all the black that you see here. So this also means that this baby is not viable. Usually the pregnancy will be terminated at this stage.
Denise,
Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt. I put my hand up, but I was going to ask, you mentioned chromosomal. What's an example of a chromosomal?
Chromosomal defects are like
anomaly.
they're like Down syndromes. You have like trisomies. So trisomy 18, 13 is like Turner syndrome. You have things like that. So things that went wrong in your DNA. Those are chromosomal abnormalities. Structural abnormalities do not necessarily mean there's something wrong in the DNA. It's usually like a construction error in the body. Like there's a hand missing or the spine is not closed. So those are structural defects, but chromosomal defects are really DNA problems, so to say. And I also have to say that with these ultrasounds, we specifically look for structural problems. We are not able to see all chromosomal problems. Most chromosomal problems go hand in hand with a lot of structural defects. So we will be able to see structural defects and then refer to a hospital where they will find it's actually a chromosomal defect. But things like Down syndrome, we have so many different forms of Down syndrome. So you have babies or children that are severely affected, but you also have very light cases of Down syndrome. So the severely affected ones, yes, I will be able to see those on an ultrasound because those usually have heart defects, they'll have intestinal defects, but the very light cases of Down syndrome will not have any of those. So I will not recognize those on an ultrasound. So that's a very important difference that people need to understand before they agree to do an ultrasound like this. So this is an example of a second trimester screening, like a 20-week scan. And as you can see a lot more details by then. So you're able to see hands, you're able to see feet, the face is more defined, you're able to see organs. So we're checking the heart in a lot more detail by this stage. We're checking kidneys, we're checking the brain, we're doing several measurements. And this ultrasound will usually take about 45 minutes. Yeah, we are revisiting most of the things that we looked at 13 weeks, but we're going to add everything else that we can see by then. And also in this stage, we could find problems with the baby, things that might not have been visible yet at 13 weeks because they're more refined, or things that have developed in between the first trimester and second trimester screening. So that is also a possibility. Something that you might be able to see on the bottom right, you see a beautiful face. You see again the nasal bone with the nose, you can see the lips, and you can see the chin. What's very important is that the chin is in line with the forehead. So that's what I'm looking for specifically. And if you look at the picture on the left here, again, you see the forehead, you see the nasal bone, you see the nose, top lip, and then the jaw is right there, the lower, the chin. And as you can see, that chin is not in line with the forehead. This does not look like a normal face. So this for me is a sign that there is probably a chromosomal defect going on. It is a structural defect to begin with, but it is associated with a lot of chromosomal problems, too many for me to name right now. So for me, this would always be a sign to refer to a hospital immediately. Then we have growth ultrasounds. So growth ultrasounds, you can get referrals for by your midwife. And it can be either because you had a previous baby that was very big or very small. So they want to check what this baby is going to do in this pregnancy, or you can get a growth referral because the midwife has measured your belly by hand and thinks, hey, this is going too fast or this is going too slow, and I want to have it checked what this baby is doing. We're measuring the head, the abdomen, and the femur. You will see examples of that in the pictures. The top one right here is an example of an abdomen. Here you can see the 3 white dots. That's the spine of the baby. And you can see the ribs on either side sticking out. And the black center there, that's the stomach of the baby. And the other black sort of, well, I call it a comma, but it's a blood vessel from the umbilical cord that goes through the liver and up towards the heart. This is an example of an abdomen measurement. Left bottom is an example of the head measurements. You will see the brain inside. We're measuring around the skull. And on the right, you will see a measurement of the femur. If we add those together, we can put them in like a mathematical formula, and it will generate an estimated fetal weight. And that's also what we use to see if the baby is continuing to grow at the same rate. So you're allowed to have big babies, small babies. It really doesn't matter. What's important to me is that this baby is following its own rate. So if I see a baby growing at a certain rate and then suddenly it's dropping, then I'm worried, because why is that baby dropping? Is it because of a placental problem? Is it something that, you know, the baby is just programmed to do in their DNA? We don't know. So usually you have several growth ultrasounds to continue the growth. So you can never say how a baby is growing from just one growth ultrasound. You need to compare it with at least a couple more, so you can sort of plot it in a graph. This is an example of a placental position ultrasound. It's a bit more tricky if you look at this one. This is a transvaginal ultrasound, because by the time that a woman is 31 to 32 weeks pregnant, I will not be able to access the cervix through an abdominal ultrasound. So I need to do a transvaginal ultrasound. What you see here, which is indicated by the white arrows, that's the cervix. And this black part up here, that is the ultrasound machine. This big thing over here, it already says, but that's the head. So you can see it's not very recognizable anymore. But what we're doing is basically checking how far that placenta is located from the cervix. This area right here is all placenta, and you can see it's sort of ending right there. So this is the end of the placenta. And where the yellow arrow is, that's the entrance or exit, as you can say from baby's point of view, from the womb. This is not far enough. You need at least 2 centimeters. What I see here is probably 1 or 2 millimeters. So if this is the case at 31 or 32 weeks, the woman will probably be referred to a gynecologist, and the gynecologist will check it again, also later in the pregnancy, to see if that placenta is moving up with the growth of the uterus, or if it's staying in this position. If it's staying in this position, the woman is not able to deliver safely, because if you get 10 centimeters in this little area right there, this placenta will become loose at that point. And if a placenta becomes loose, you will lose a lot of blood through that little part. You can actually bleed out on such a small tear. So that's why they're very, very safe with that. We need at least 2 centimeters distance for a woman to deliver safely. So if this is the case, this would mean it will be a C-section. Then we have our position ultrasound at 36 weeks. I don't have any pictures of that, because basically you won't be able to recognize anything anymore. You just put your machine down on the woman's belly, and you will either see a bum or you will either see a head. And as you can see, these are the different positions that a baby can be in at 36 weeks. Of course, ideally you would want the cephalic position. Breech position is possible to deliver naturally in, but is not preferred. It presents with a lot more risks. So yeah, we would usually advise you to visit a gynecologist by then. And of course, a transverse lie, the right one, that's simply not possible at all to deliver. So that would be definitely a C-section, but they will probably first try and turn the baby around manually to see if they can push the baby into a cephalic position. And then the last medical ultrasound that we can perform around 41 weeks. Baby is too big to measure. So you basically just check the amount of amniotic fluid, check if the stomach is filled, if the bladder is filled, and just see if you can find any movements of the baby, because that indicates that baby is still feeling happy. If you don't have any amniotic fluid left, or you see other signs like a placenta that looks calcified, for example, that will be signs to deliver the baby pretty soon, and you do not want to wait any longer. So then we have our fun ultrasounds. Gender reveal is pretty self-explanatory, I think. These are fun ultrasounds, as we call them. So it means that we're not going to medically check a baby at this stage. Of course, me and all my colleagues, we are medically trained. So if we do see something that stands out to us at this ultrasound, we will tell the parents. We're not keeping any information from them, but we're not going to be specifically looking for it. So it's basically just trying to make some beautiful pictures and, you know, give the parents a nice experience and some nice pictures to take home. And then, of course, the 3D, 4D ultrasounds, which is usually what most people love. It's trying to get us a realistic view of the baby. And if you're lucky, you get to see a lot of nice facial expressions from the baby. You will see yawning, you'll see smiles, you can see tongue sticking out. You can see thumb sucking, toe sucking sometimes. You know, it's basically a lot of fun, and you try to give the parents a nice experience. So that's basically our goal at that stage.
I have
Yes.
another question, Denise. I like the Gene Simmons baby in the bottom left. Looks like a kiss baby.
I love that one as well. That's why I chose to add it on there.
But my real question is, in the
Mhm.
US, it's very, very common to do like keepsakes. Is that something that you guys do as well? Like, for example, we do keepsakes, like CDs, for examples, with the images, and
Mhm.
they do printouts, and it's like a big thing. Yeah.
You will
Okay.
basically, at the clinic where I work, you will always get a printout if we see a nice image of the baby. And you can choose to purchase a USB flash drive on which we will put videos, photos, whatever you prefer. It's an additional cost. Of course, it's about $8 extra. But yes, we can definitely add it and spend some extra time during the ultrasound to add those images. Yeah. Well, actually, this was the end of my very spontaneous presentation. So if you have any questions, please just fire away.
So
I think you can go ahead, Michael.
we have a tremendous problem in the United States with aridness in the West. And we have all these fires every year. And they're telling us that one of the major causes of fires are gender reveal parties with explosions that result in setting fire to the grasslands, and then it spreads to the forest. So I thought you might find that interesting.
Yeah, I do. And I hate it. We have the same here in the Netherlands and France, and it's horrible. I do have a lot of requests during those gender ultrasounds to, you know, keep it a secret at that stage and just put the gender into an envelope. And usually they'll go to a baker, you know, and, you know, have the baker prepare a cake with a certain color, or they'll fill up a balloon or something. But yeah, we do get the occasional well, sort of interesting stories of people who actually rented an entire circuit, like a race circuit. They had a car and they had tires to put under those cars, and they would make wheelies, and then the smoke that would, you know, be generated by those wheelies, it would be blue or pink, you know, and to me it sounded insane, but whatever floats your boat, I guess.
At
But
what
yeah, I
stage,
do. Yeah.
at what stage are you able to determine that a child has is poly whatever with their genitals?
You mean that it has both genitals, or?
Yes. Yes.
Well, usually it could be from 15 weeks upwards, but it does get a lot more clearer around the 20-week ultrasound. So usually at the 20-week ultrasound, you will have a closer look at the genitals as well, because you want to establish if they are normal. You could, for example, have a baby with, let's say, like a micro penis, or things like that, and it would be very easy to look at it and say, oh, it's a girl, and where it's actually a boy. But yeah, if you would have the both genders, you probably would be able to see it in a 20-week ultrasound, but it will be very, very tricky, because usually you will probably see a penis sticking out. So you logically say, oh, it's a boy, and then after birth it will, you will actually see that there's a vagina there as well, because it's not really a vagina that you can see on an ultrasound, it's the labia that you see. So that's how you recognize it.
Thank you.
I think you told us this in the oh, Ailish had a hand up. Sorry, go ahead, Ailish.
Go ahead, Susie. I can wait. Go ahead. Go ahead, Susie.
I think you told us this in your other presentation you did, but what percentage roughly of births are C-sections in the Netherlands versus what we have here in the US? Do you have any idea, Denise?
I don't know the numbers by head anymore, but I do know the rates in the United States is a lot higher than it is in the Netherlands. Basically, the Netherlands is pretty low compared to most other countries, and it's basically because we're very, very conservative in a way that we know that, or we think that a C-section is one of the worst like surgeries a woman can go through in her life, and it takes a lot of recovery. It takes about 6 weeks of recovery. So, and especially in the beginning, you just cannot even pick up your own baby. So if it is preventable, they will do it. So they really see it as a last resort. If they know that this baby needs to be born right now, then they'll do a C-section, but they won't do it lightly. So usually what you have is like a traffic light effect next to the bed. It's not really a traffic light, of course, but if everything's on green, you're good to go. But if something turns orange, especially if you have a medical history with a difficult birth, then they will decide and see, are we going to do a C-section, yes or no?
Okay, thank you.
So that brings up the question, Denise, if here in the States, the trend has always been once a C-section, always a C-section. Do you follow that rubric, or do you allow the woman to try and have the baby vaginally after she's had a C-section?
If it's the first baby after a C-section. So if you've had a C-section before and you're pregnant with your second baby, you're allowed a trial of labor. And if that works out, it's perfect. But if you've had 2 C-sections, then it's done. Unfortunately, you can't have a trial of labor after 2 C-sections, because your uterus will be too weakened by then. So they just won't risk it.
Yeah, they couldn't do that.
Plus, if you want to do a trial of labor, you have to give birth at the hospital. So you're not allowed to do a home birth in that case, because they want to monitor you very, very closely, because you have a higher chance of a uterine rupture.
Yeah. And what's your postnatal care like? It's diabolically horrible here. Essentially, you have your baby on Sunday morning and you go home Sunday night, and until you go into to your pediatrician at 6 weeks, and your OBGYN at 6 weeks, you're lucky. You don't see anybody. Nobody comes to your house, nothing. So what do you guys do over there that's so totally awesome?
Well, so usually what I really would recommend, after you've given a normal vaginal birth, to go home as quickly as possible, because you don't want to stay too long at the hospital. You do need to pee beforehand. That's very important. You're not allowed to leave the hospital until you've peed properly. And then you go home. And when you get home, there will be like a maternal caregiver, which is a woman who comes to your house for the next week or 9 days. She'll be there every day for a couple of hours, and she will help out. She will check you, she will check the baby, she will help out at home. She will do some laundry, or just vacuum the house or something, clean up, and she will be there for at least a week. And the midwife will also come every other day and visit you, and she will care for you, so to say, for the next 9 days. And then after that, it's up to your GP again.
So your maternal death rates must be considerably lower than ours. Ours are horribly high.
They were actually, up until a couple of years ago, they were still considered pretty high for Western Europe standards. But that was because there wasn't a proper communication between like midwife, hospital, gynecologists and everything. So we've had a lot of changes where there is now a lot more integrated care. So there is a lot more, how do you say, meetings between midwives and maternal caregivers and gynecologists. So we all work together. And since then, it has drastically improved. Yes.
Good for you.
Yes, we're happy about that.
Well, I just want to say that I'm glad I didn't know all of this during my pregnancy. I'm really glad I didn't know all of this. I didn't have a cesarean, but I did spend 6 days in the hospital, which was wonderful because they took care of me, they looked after me, and I didn't have to worry about anything. If I wanted to sleep, I could sleep, and that was wonderful. But I'm so glad I didn't know any of that stuff substantially.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'd have had a coronary probably, because I was definitely ignorant of a lot of things, because I spent my ill-spent youth just having fun and partying and going places and doing things and having no interest in babies whatsoever.
Oh, I do have to say that it's a good point you're actually telling us there, Elise, because well, women get offered all these ultrasounds, but they always have they are always allowed to opt out, so to say. So they are allowed to not know the information if they do not want to know. So they won't receive the ultrasounds. It's a choice you have to make. You know, usually you see that every woman will get the ultrasound, but some people, especially the more religious people, they choose not to get 20-week ultrasounds because they accept all babies, no matter in what form. So yeah,
right.
It's good to know.
Well, I just know that you know the way you get all sorts of advice from everybody, and I just got one piece of advice from a very good friend with which I lived by for the rest of my child rearing days. Was Una Martin said to me, she said, I know you're going to get all sorts of advice from all sorts of people. And I said, I did, and I do, and I don't know what to do about any of it. And she said, well, pay no attention to any of it except for my advice. And in my head, I went, okay. So Una said, just remember, mother always knows best. And she was right. And I stood by that advice for the entire pregnancy and for the child raising, not paying heed to anybody who would say do this or do that or do whatever. So that was interesting.
It's good advice. Thank you.
Yes.
I was going to ask a follow-up question, Denise, kind of related to what Susie had brought up in the beginning, but insurance-wise, tell us about the impacts, because I've had 2 babies in the U.S. recently, and so I'm pretty familiar with what insurance is like and what it's not like here in the U.S. Could you give us kind of a rundown of that? Like, so do you have the ability to say I want to do it this way, or does it depend on policies? What are the factors?
Well, basically your standard insurance that everybody has to have and is available to everybody covers most of your pregnancy. It covers all the medical ultrasounds that you need. And it, of course, also covers home birth. It covers the maternal care after the birth. And in some cases, it also covers a hospital birth. So especially if you are advised to get a hospital birth, it is immediately covered. But you also, in the end, you get to choose where you want to give birth. So you can either opt for a home birth or you can opt for a hospital birth. The hospital birth will not be led by a gynecologist. It will be led by your normal midwife, who would also be at your home birth. And there is an additional fee that you have to pay, but I don't know by heart. I think it's a couple of €100. It's not thousands or everything, but it is an additional fee that you have to pay. But like I said, for example, if you have a higher chance of a lot of blood loss, it's immediately covered by your insurance company, so no questions asked. And yeah, so there are usually, for example, if you choose to breastfeed after the birth and you have trouble starting with the breastfeeding, you will automatically get more days covered by your insurance company that the maternal caregiver is there at your house, because she will also assist you with the breastfeeding. So there are lots of additional things that you can add up depending on your choice.
Okay. That was a curiosity for me. If I recall, the first time in Alaska, it was a package deal, and we basically went to the provider that we wanted to, and we had to get, pre-approved whatever with the insurance, but it was like a package deal, and it was like a deluxe package, premier package.
Yeah, no, you
packages.
don't. Well, you can have additional insurance, and then there might be some other things, like if you want to have a hospital birth, if you have an additional insurance, it's covered. You don't have to pay those couple of hundreds of euros. So that really depends on how big your insurance is that you pay for. But if you just have the general basic insurance, it is a home birth is always covered, so to say. And if it needs to be hospital birth is also covered. And what was I going to say? And yes, it is, you are free to choose where you go. So you are free to choose which hospital you want to give birth in, of course, within reason. So if your midwife is located in the center of the Netherlands, you cannot really go and say to your midwife, I want you to go with me to the north of the Netherlands. I mean, she can't do that. So you have to find another midwife there. But you would be allowed to go to the north if you want to give birth there. Same with our clinic for ultrasounds. I mean, we are covered, the insurance company covers all our ultrasounds, the medical ones. So for example, you could live in the north and you could come down to us and have your ultrasound, and it really doesn't matter. It's all covered.
Two more follow-ups, and I'll be quiet. So the next one, it was more of a comment, and just if you had thoughts on it or whatever, but just a comment. And I don't know how much experience you have training with or working with folks from outside of Europe, but my wife, who is Mexican, it was whenever we had our first baby in Alaska, she made an assumption that she was going to have a C-section, and we had a large conversation about that. And the reason was, and this is just telling everybody in the group here, was that in Latin America, only wealthy people have C-sections. Only poor people have natural birth. Yeah. And so it was like a societal norm from her place in the pecking order, and so it was an expectation. But the interesting thing was the doctors got paid more to do it. So it was a cycle that fed on itself. So you had doctors who, in my opinion, were giving bad advice based on higher paychecks for more complex services, and then also it had a connotation of wealth or connotation of a higher status, etc. Anyway, I just didn't know if you had any thoughts on that or if you ever heard that.
Yes, I have heard of that, and it's actually something that I have noticed a lot in our clinic as well, because we have a lot of international clients in our clinic, and especially the Latin American, South American women. They come in and they ask me, well, is the baby in a good position, because I'm going to schedule my C-section. And then I'm the person to tell them, well, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works here. I mean, you're going to have to do a vaginal delivery, because I see nothing wrong with this baby. I don't see any problems with your placenta. So yeah, good luck. And it's a shock mostly. But they will have talks with the midwife about it, and she will explain everything. And the thing is, the doctors here, they do not get paid for a C-section or something. They just get their hourly wage at the hospital. So they do not get paid per procedure. So because it's all covered by the insurance company as well. So of course there is a fee, and it costs a lot more to do a C-section, but it's basically they look at mother's welfare first. And I'm very happy about that. So and I recently had a woman who she was Dutch, but she lived in the Philippines. And she told me the exact same story. She just has one gynecologist there. She pays the gynecologist for each visit that she has there. And then she pays that gynecologist to do the C-section, which is going to be pre-scheduled. I mean, because, you know, then the gynecologist will know when she's available. And then she'll plan your C-section, get your baby out, and then you're done. And to me, that sounds insane. I mean, why would you cut into a healthy body?
Yeah, that's just, it's terrifying. And I try to mind my own business. I'm not gonna tell other women what to do or how to do it, but for my own wife, her health is paramount for me. But it was a really interesting course of events that actually spread. It was interesting. You'll appreciate this. It was interesting because that opinion was then spread throughout my wife's family and somewhat her extended family. So it's been a shift for them as well, even in Mexico.
Very
So it's kind of
happy
an
to hear
interesting.
it. Yeah, very happy to hear it. So yeah, basically what you said earlier, do women have a choice? Yes, they have a choice up to a certain point. I mean, you cannot choose to do a C-section unless it is necessary. So that's the only choice you do not get to have.
Okay. And then my last question was, did we ever do any kind of connection, or did we ever find any kind of link with the doctor? His name was Dr. Ray. Remember Dr. Ray in Australia, who went to Nepal?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Did we ever make any connection with him, or any kind of? Did nothing ever happened? Because I know you were obviously very interested in.
I was interested, but I did not contact him afterwards, and I'm not sure anybody else did.
I did. He never wrote me back.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a shame. All right. Any other questions?
No, this was great. It took me back to my years of working for OBGYN practice.
Good.
I have to
Nice
drop
to hear.
off, but that was fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
very
drop
good.
for now. See
You're
you all
welcome.
later.
I love those little baby pictures. They're so cute.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so
That
much,
was
Denise.
really, really interesting. Thank you, Denise. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
So I have one. I
Excellent.
just have one quick question, because I know this happens sometimes. What do you do when because this has to affect you when you see these ultrasounds where you know something isn't right and you have to have that horrible conversation with the mother. What do you do for your self-care when you've had to go through that?
I talk a lot to my colleagues. Yesterday, I had a 20-week ultrasound, and I started the ultrasound, and I immediately noticed that there was no heartbeat. So this was a baby that died suddenly at 20 weeks without any cause that we could find. So yeah, those are pretty terrible conversations you have to have, especially also when you see a defect. And it really depends, like at what stage of the pregnancy you are, what kind of defect you see. We do have defects that babies are not that much affected by, we call them defects, but there's really no problem. And then of course there are defects that will be a big problem, and a baby will not be, it can have a normal life, for example, or it will die before it's born, probably because of that defect. And the best way that I know how to tell it is just tell it straight out. Don't wind around it. Just tell the people, and then try to answer any questions that they have. And for me personally, yes, I am affected by them, because you never get used to it, so to say. And I always, especially when I notice that something is wrong, I get cold on the inside, and I know I'm going to have to share some bad news. And I'm just going to push them off that cloud that they were on the entire time in their pregnancy. But yeah, what I do is I talk to my colleagues. So I walk into the other room where my colleague will be once she has a time, and we'll just sit down and we'll look at the images that I saw, and she'll share some of her experiences. I'll share my experience, and later on I might call some of my friends who are also doctors at a hospital, and I will just talk to them about it. And that's basically what helps me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
'Cause
when
I
I
know
get home,
that's
try
hard.
not to think about it. Yeah.
I know that's hard.
Yeah, see it as
During
your
those
job, and
conversations.
it's hard to say. There was a police officer a while back in the Netherlands who gave an interview, and they said, well, when we are at a site of a horrific car crash, for example, and the person has died, it sounds horrible. We try to see that person as an object, so it's not a person that's laying there; it's an object, and that's how we talk about it. And of course, once the family comes, you have to sort of adjust to that, but I try to do the same way. So when I see a baby and I'm checking a baby, it's an object for me. Because if I see it personally every time, I would not be able to do this job for very long.
No. Well, I'm glad you take care of yourself. I'm glad you recognize that because it is difficult.
Thank you.
Good job. And so on the spur of the moment, thank you so much. I know how hard that is.
Thank you. It was lots of sweat. I came home and I was like, I have to start. And then that cat was just, it was trying to get attention. And at one point I just threw him into the hallway like, no, I don't have time.
You're always on the wrong side of the door.
Yeah.
Thanks
Well,
so
Denise,
much.
thank you.
You're
On
welcome.
behalf of everyone,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
I did
Bye,
not see
Have a
my
wonderful
name,
day,
so,
everyone.
but bye.
Bye. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Next week.
Thank you.
Pam,
Wonderful.
you gonna end the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
I can transfer it to you if you want, Mike, if you want to hang out.
Service above self.
Service above self.
That was about